So today we're going to be taking a look at the checklist component in Plotly Dash. It's one of the open core components, so it's completely open source. It's not part of the paid side. Today what we're going to be doing is creating a basic default settings checklist that'll display horizontally in the web browser. Then we'll make that vertical, which if you look at the documentation can be a little bit tricky. But it's actually very simple. It's just a simple little input to make it vertical. Then we'll make some options pre-selected. So let's say you'll have 3 options. In this case, we're going to be doing cities: London, Rome, and Berlin. Let's say you wanted to have London as the pre-selected option. So when they'd open up the web page, London would already be ticked. I'll show you how to do that. Then I'll show you how to change the color of the text, change the font size, so you can manipulate these lists so they look a little bit more suitable for your application. And then I'll even show you how to change it from having text, let's say the cities London, Rome, Berlin, and then we'll have images instead, which we can just pull straight from the web, so nothing needs to be locally stored. However, you can have it locally stored if you want to. I'll just show you how to pull it from a URL, and that's just using a simple HTML image component. So firstly, what we'll do is we'll just open up your IDE of choice. In my case, it's VS Code. You could use Atom, you could use PyCharm, whatever you fancy. And then we're going to just create a simple Py file. I've just called this checklists demo, just because I'm going to be demoing this today. And then the very first thing is what we'll do is we'll import dash. So from dash, import, and then we'll import dash. We'll also want the HTML for that, and we'll want the DCC. Oh, not disk manager. We want DCC, and then we'll create the application. So that's just going to be app equals dash bracket double underscore name, and then we'll also just down here create the end of that, which is an if underscore name underscore double equals space double equals speech marks double underscore main double underscore colon, and then app dot run underscore server. And then for the debug, we're going to have that equal true. Now if you were going to deploy this for real, you would set that to false most likely, but we're going to leave this as true just because then we can make changes in VS Code, save them, and then they'll automatically refresh, so we won't have to keep starting the server up every time. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll start here. So to create a checklist, firstly we need to make the app layout. So we'll do app.layout, and this is just sort of what will be displayed. So you could have other parts of your program around this, let's say things doing the computations, but for the actual displaying of the data or any checklists or graphs or anything you want, you'll have to have that in the app layout. So we'll just have that equal, we'll have that html.div. So we'll put it all into a div. You don't have to. You could have that just equal the checklist component, which I'll show you in a moment. So we'll drag that down, just give ourselves plenty of space to work in. And then what we'll have is we'll have dcc, which is how you call the components, checklist, bracket. And then what we'll do is for a simple component, what we'll do is we'll just have a simple list. So this is going to be our 3 options for the checklist. So like I said, with the cities, we'll have not London, London, comma, just separate these with a comma, it's just a simple list, Rome, and then we'll do Berlin. Okay, so that's the components there for our list. Just clean that up a little bit. Just want to make it nice and clear and well spread out for anybody watching here, so it's easy to follow. And that is the basics of creating a list. So if I save this now and then I run this, we should see that the dash is running. And like I've mentioned in a previous tutorial, that it is based off Flask. So if you've ever created a Flask application before, you can create a dash application. It's very, very simple. And then we'll simply just go to the browser, put in our our IP address, which is 127.0.0.1 at the port of 8050, and there we go. We can see our list is here. It's interactive. You can click these, and that's the basics of the list, the checklist. So if you just need to make a very, very basic one, you know how to do it. Now let's say we want to have that vertical. That's no problem at all. All we need to do is we'll just go back here. We can leave everything running. Just bring this down. We don't need to be seeing that. So there, if I wanted to make this vertical, I would simply just go along here and we can put in just a comma after that, just so we can keep this all within that checklist. And I can simply say label style equals, do our curly brackets, and then display colon, and then we'll say we just want that in block. Okie dokie. So then if I save that and I go back to here and I refresh it, we have that in a nice vertical format now. So personally, when I've looked on the internet to try and figure out how to make it vertical, it was actually a little bit of a challenge. So by default it should be vertical, and then you would change certain things to make it horizontal. But for me, in my experience, I don't know if it was older tutorials that were I was coming across in the documentation, but it wasn't as clear. So hopefully, if anyone's been struggling with that, that's how you do it. It's dead simple. It's no trouble at all. And then if we wanted to style this, so let's say make the colors different, make the text larger or smaller, I'll show you how to do that too. Very simple. So we just go back into the editor here, and we'll just add, don't forget a little comma there just to separate these things. And then we literally have just style. So just styling this up, and then we can say color, and then a colon to separate that, then whatever color you want. So you could use you could just say, let's say blue. So I can put that there and say blue, and that'll be the whatever the default blue is. And then we could even say font size. So if we want to change the font size, put it in like this, and then we can say, let's say 50. So make it nice and large. Okie dokie. We'll save that. We go back to the browser, refresh that, and there we go. So we can see London, Rome, Berlin, nice and big, and we've got them in blue. There's lots of different ways you can style this. If you go to the Dash Plotly documentation, it'll have everything in there that you need to see. So I've shown you now how to put it in, and then you can just find different things. So style, font, maybe you want to make things bold or italic, you can do that too. There's no real shortage of what you can do. You just need to play around with it. Okie dokie. So let's say we want to have some things predefined. That's no problem either. All we would do is we'll drop down here and we'll put another list in here, and we'll call that, let's say, London. Okie dokie, and then we'll just separate that off. So that other list there coming afterwards, we'll pre-select an option. So we can see as I refresh that, I can unselect that. Then when I refresh the page again, you'll see it's already selected. You could do that with two, so you could say London and Berlin. So I'll just put a comma in this section here, and we'll say Berlin. Just save that, and then we'll refresh the page. Sometimes it just takes a second. Refresh that there, and now we can see London and Berlin are selected. Doesn't stop you from unselecting, so you could use that for any application. Let's say you have a little terms and conditions page you wanted to have pop up first, or anything like that, and you want to have decline automatically selected so people wouldn't accidentally accept something they didn't want to accept. You could have something along those lines or whatever. I mean, really the options for you. Or let's say you have a graph that displays for the population of London or the population of these cities. You could have London pre-selected on the checklist, so that would show up first when the page is opened and it wouldn't be empty. That's what you could do. There's one idea for you. Right, so now if we're going to create a checklist where instead of having just text we have images for each section, that's going to be a little more complicated. Not massively. We just have to break this checklist down into different sections. So instead of just having the checklist component here and then having everything just inside like that, we'll have to then break it down. So if we're going to have an image for London, an image for Rome, and an image for Berlin, we'll need to separate these out into 3 separate areas so we can have a call for each image. And I'll show you how to do that. It's not too complicated, but it is a little bit more involved than what we've got here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just get rid of this here, I'll even get rid of the HTML div because I'll show you we can just, if you want to, put the component straight in to the layout. So we'll just put the checklist in there, open that with a bracket, bring that down. Let me get rid of that one because that's in the way. So I'll bring this down. We'll need quite a bit of space here, and then I'll just bring that down here. I want to start with the square bracket. Just keep everything in those square brackets. And then we'll want some curly brackets. So the curly bracket here will be to separate each part, so each sort of section of the checklist. So we'll start with a label, and then we'll put a colon here, and this is where we'll call the image. So we'll go HTML dot image. So if you've ever done anything with HTML before, you'll recognize this. We can add some sort of styling to the image as well. So the images I'm going to call here are quite large. So I'll just scale these down. So we'll say height equals, and I'll say 10%. So we'll just scale that down to 10% of its original size. And then we'll also have to do that for the width. So we'll separate that with a comma, say width, and then we'll equal that to 10%. Nice and easy. And then we'll have the source of the image, equal that, put some of those in, and then we're doing London here. So we'll just go to the internet, go to our browser. I've already got a logo here selected from London. I've literally just gone under Google Images and typed in London logo. Copy the image address for that. Go back here, paste that in, and that's everything we need to do for that part. And there's one last part for that section. So we'll end that with a comma, come back down, and then what we need to do is we need to just assign the value for that. So we'll have the value, and we'll just call that London, just so we've got a value assigned. That is basically all you need to do for an image. So what I'll do is you can just literally copy this part here and paste this a few times, just so you have it for each of the cities, and all you'd have to do is change the value and the source URL. So I'll just quickly run through that now, and each one of them is the same, so I don't need to show you each step, and then I'll show you the result. Okay, so now that that's done, I'll just simply save that, and then when I go to refresh the page, we should have, if we go back to that link, if I refresh that, now you can see we have images popping up here as well. So we've got the London, we've got the Rome, and we've got the Berlin. So that's simply how you would include that into your site. So if you needed a checklist and you needed images, or you need to change the font, you need to change the layout, that's how you can do it. You can style this more with a style sheet using some CSS if you want, but that's the basics of how a checklist will work, and that's probably how you'd need to use a checklist in any real situation that you might come up against. Like I say, you can contain that all in the checklist. There's ways you can take the data out, you can use data frames, you can use NumPy, you can use pandas, you can use all manner of things in Dash for your checklists. But that's a brief overview on how you can do the majority of use cases with it that you'll need. So anything that you need, that should help. I'll just zoom out there so you can see everything there. Really, it's just the URLs that are making this long, but there's really not a lot of code in it to do something that's quite interesting, and I hope that's helped you out. Thanks for watching.